People make sacrifices all the time for lots of reasons. Our time is limited and you can only be in one place at a time. Actors are no different. They make sacrifices in their lives, but it's when they make those sacrifices for their craft that people sit up and really take notice. With that in mind, in the video today, 10 actors who went far beyond what was expected to give a convincing performance. Number 10. Sylvester Stallone. Rocky. Sylvester Stallone was born in Hell's Kitchen in 1946. After a difficult upbringing, some of which was spent in foster care, he dropped out of college to pursue acting. He struggled to make ends meet, getting only a few uncredited roles. He even appeared in an adult film called The Party at Kitty and Studs. One day, trying to keep warm, he went inside the New York Public Library and found a book by Edgar Allan Poe. He became fascinated by the poet and his writing and began writing scripts. After a few tries, he was able to sell one for $100. Writing was a struggle and he wound up pawning some of his wife's jewelry. Soon after, they were divorced. Things got so bad for Stallone that he was once even forced to sell his dog for $25. It was at this point Stallone realized that it hit rock bottom. 2 weeks later, after watching a boxing match between Muhammad Ali and Chuck Wepner, Stallone began writing frantically on a script. That script was Rocky. He finished it in a mere 20 hours. After a series of rejections, he was offered $125,000, but since he also wanted to star in the film, he turned down the offer. They increased their bid, but Stallone still said no. Finally, the studio relented and agreed to let him star. The catch was that he now would only get $35,000 for the script, in addition to a small percentage of the profits. Rocky went on to win 3 Oscars in 1976, including Best Picture. Oh, and one more footnote. Stallone tracked down his dog and purchased him back for $15,000. The dog appeared in the film as Rocky's own canine companion, Butkus. Number 9. Jim Carrey, Man on the Moon. Jim Carrey is best known for his bizarre hyperkinetic comedy. That's why it came as a surprise when he showed with films like The Truman Show that he could give understated, nuanced acting performances as well. Carrey put his dramatic chops to the test with Man on the Moon, directed by Milos Forman. Carrey plays the role of Andy Kaufman, an entertainer, actor, performance artist, and professional wrestler. Throughout filming, Carrey refused to break character. He alienated friends and family in the process. He even refused to answer to his own name, insisting that he only be called Andy. Things got even weirder than that. Jerry the King Lawler, a wrestler known for his feud with the real Kaufman, played himself in the movie. In 1982, Lawler got into an argument with Kaufman in a joint interview on Late Night with David Letterman. The segment ended with Lawler slapping Kaufman and Kaufman throwing coffee in Lawler's face. Carrey was set on experiencing everything Kaufman felt during his life and wanted to truly reenact those events. Everyone else, Lawler, the director, the insurance company, was against it, but Carrey ended up spitting in Lawler's face just so that he could get him riled up. When they recreated the Letterman incident, Lawler didn't hold back. Lawler and Carrey didn't become vengeful enemies or anything, so don't worry, and though the movie itself didn't do well at the box office, Carrey did receive a Golden Globe for his performance. Number 8. Christian Bale, The Machinist. Christian Bale is known for altering his appearance for the various roles he's played throughout his career. He got ripped in American Psycho and Reign of Fire, then starved himself for Rescue Dawn. He bulked up for The Dark Knight, only to lose the weight again for his role in The Fighter. But he went to extremes for the role of Trevor Resnick, an insomniac who starts to doubt his own sanity in The Machinist. When he made Reign of Fire back in 2002, he weighed 183 pounds. Most of that was muscle. Not 2 years later, he became pretty much skin and bone. Bale really more closely resembled a ghoul than a person and weighed in at a mere 120 pounds. He achieved this on a daily diet of black coffee, a can of tuna, an apple, and a pack of cigarettes to suppress his appetite. He reportedly wanted to lose an extra 5 pounds before filming, but doctors warned against it. They strongly believed he could actually die if he lost any more weight. Bale's body was so weak and his muscles so non-existent at that point that he couldn't run for more than a minute or two before becoming exhausted. Amazingly, within months of finishing The Machinist, he gained back 68 pounds and once again got ripped for Batman Begins. The Machinist bombed at the box office, earning just $64,000 on its opening weekend, which means that far more people saw the picture of Ghoul Bale than the movie itself. Number 7. The whole cast. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Adapted from Ken Casey's novel, One Flew Over the Cuckoo Nest is regarded as one of the best films in history, winning the Big 5 Oscars. Jack Nicholson stars as a criminal who pleads insanity to avoid prison and then rebels against the oppressive hospital staff. Not well known about the film is that many extras and even some of the crew were actual patients and staff members in the Oregon State Psychiatric Hospital where the movie was filmed. For instance, the character Dr. John Spivey is played by Dr. Dean Brooks, the real superintendent at the hospital. Throughout the production of the film, the cast lived on the hospital grounds. There, they interacted with real psychiatric patients. During that time, their director Milos Forman organized unscripted group therapy sessions where the actors could develop their characters naturally. Many of those sessions were captured on film without the actors knowing it. Some were even included in the film. Danny DeVito developed an imaginary friend while filming and expressed very real concerns for his own sanity to Dr. Brooks. Brooks reassured him, however, saying that if he still considered his companion fictional, things were fine. Sidney Lassick, on the other hand, suffered a mental breakdown. He became overwhelmed and had to be removed from the set. Louise Fletcher, playing the role of the evil nurse Ratchet, ripped off her clothes in front of her colleagues. This was done in an attempt to become closer to the other actors, since she felt isolated because of her role as the antagonist. Number 6. Adrien Brody, the pianist. Roman Polanski handpicked Adrien Brody to play the role of a Jewish piano player struggling to survive the destruction of the Warsaw Ghetto during World War II, in a story based on true events. In order to prepare for the film, he lost 30 pounds in just 6 weeks. He put himself on a strict diet of a couple of boiled eggs, a small piece of fish or chicken, and some steamed vegetables. His quick weight loss put him in a cranky mood, which helped develop his character even further. And as the title of the movie suggests, Brody practiced playing the piano 4 hours each day. To further immerse himself in the role, he broke ties with friends and family. He sold his car and apartment back in the States. He disconnected his phone and only took 2 bags and his keyboard with him when he moved to Europe for the duration of production. For the following 6 months, he encouraged a sense of loneliness and loss within himself. He avoided personal connections and material possessions in order to keep in character. Brody was guided by Polanski, a Holocaust survivor himself, every step of the way. What Brody believes to be the greatest thing he got from playing the role is the sense of how little his petty material desires matter in the real world compared to what his character went through during the war. The Pianist won 3 Oscars: Best Actor, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay. Number 5. Robert De Niro, Cape Fear. Martin Scorsese's decision to direct this remake of a classic 60s thriller came as a little shock to anyone familiar with his work. Themes like corruption and guilt mixed with violence, criminals, and conflicted outsiders have always been right up his alley. After receiving critical acclaim for movies like Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, and Goodfellas, Cape Fear proved to be a wise move on the director's part. The story follows a convicted rapist who begins to stalk the family of the lawyer who unsuccessfully defended him. Robert De Niro's performance as the convict, Max Cady, is among the finest of his career. Everything about him screams maniacal violence and revenge. This is particularly true of the prison scene where he does push-ups with pictures of Stalin in the background, his body covered in tattoos, moments before being released. The scene is so iconic, it was even parodied by The Simpsons. De Niro went through a total body transformation for the role. He got absurdly ripped, had all of his tattoos made with vegetable dye, which lasted for months, and paid a dentist $5,000 to give him bad teeth. After production, he paid another $20,000 to fix them. The movie went to be nominated for 2 Oscars, including a Best Actor nomination for De Niro. Number 4. Joaquin Phoenix, I'm Still Here. Remember that weird period where Joaquin Phoenix seemed to lose his mind? He made bizarre talk show appearances, sporting an overgrown beard and talking about giving up acting and becoming a rapper. The hosts, not sure how to handle him, would politely chortle with a perplexed look on their faces, and then he actually did quit acting and performed as a rapper on a few occasions. For about 2 years, people were convinced that Phoenix had gone completely off the rails. Drugs, prostitutes, insanity, everything was on the table as far as the public were concerned. As it turns out, it was all a ruse, or I should say performance art. It was intended to show and document the negative trends of celebrity life and culture. A daunting task, to say the least. Phoenix was seen as a madman throughout the duration of the project. To make matters worse, critics were ruthless with the documentary that resulted, I'm Still Here. The film bombed at the box office, netting just $97,000 in its opening weekend. It got so little press coverage that many still believe it to be just a rough phase in Phoenix's life. But while Phoenix survived relatively unscathed, producer and director Casey Affleck, Ben's brother, nearly went bankrupt as a result. Number 3. Daniel Day-Lewis. All his movies. Daniel Day-Lewis is famously method when it comes to his acting. He's notorious for the extreme measures and in-depth research that he makes in preparation. The actor is highly selective when it comes to the roles he takes, starring in only 7 movies since 1996. He's also very secretive with his private life, rarely giving an interview or making a public appearance. And when he's making a movie, he rarely, if ever, breaks character. During the production of 1989's My Left Foot, Lewis spent most of his time in a wheelchair just like his character. He had the crew push him around and spoon-feed him between takes. His agent called it a load of nonsense, and Lewis even damaged 2 ribs from sitting for too long. He did win an Oscar for the role, though. For his part in The Last of the Mohicans, Lewis spent a period of 6 months in the wilderness. He learned to live off the land, fish, and even skin animals. In Gangs of New York, Lewis caught pneumonia after refusing to wear a coat. He had wanted to harden himself to the cold weather. Defending his method, he said, "I'm never far away from a sense of potential absurdity of what I am doing, and maybe as I get older, I have to work harder and harder to obliterate it. That's maybe why I seem to take it far too seriously." Number 2. Marlon Brando. The Men. Like DayLewis, Marlon Brando gained fame and notoriety for his intense method approach to acting. Prior to starring in The Men, a movie about a group of World War II vets who had to cope with the mental and physical injuries of war, Brando spent a whole month in a VA hospital. Very few members of staff or patients knew who he was, and he blended in among the amputees. Lying in bed for days on end, he observed as others tried in vain to do even the most basic of tasks. He tried to emulate them, learning bit by bit what it means to be a paraplegic. Brando learned how to lift himself out of bed using only his arms, how to stumble into his wheelchair. Eventually, he revealed who he was and why he was there. Several of the patients ended up appearing in the film. The vets began confiding in him. Brando became especially close to a patient who, for the better part of the year, learned how to light a cigarette without using his hands, because he'd lost both of his own. One night, he and some of the other vets went to a popular bar in the San Fernando Valley for a drink. Like all of them, Brando was in a wheelchair. An old lady came up to them and began talking about the healing powers of prayer. If they believed enough in God, they would walk again. Brando looked at her for a while and then, with a gigantic effort, hoisted himself up at the amazement of everyone there. He then began a soft shoe dance up and down the barroom floor, screaming, "I can walk, I can walk," and then laughing, he disappeared into the night. Number 1. Heath Ledger, The Dark Knight. Heath Ledger gave a career-defining, Oscar-winning performance as the Joker in The Dark Knight. In preparation for the role, Ledger got deep into method acting. He locked himself in a hotel room for a month. He limited his contact with the outside world, opting instead to feverishly research and refine his take on arguably the most iconic comic book villain in history. Ledger said in an interview, "I ended up landing more in the realm of a psychopath, someone with very little to no conscience towards his acts." He also kept a journal, scrawling sinister quotes and phrases like, "Inside he's laughing red and black, till there's nothing left to laugh, until almost tenderly he turns inside out through his mouth." He kept himself in character throughout most of the filming, to the point where the crew members began to feel disturbed by his distorted antics. The world was shocked when Ledger died before the release of the film. Brought on by a combination of sleeping pills, painkillers, and anti-anxiety medication, some believe his demise was influenced by the role. Upon hearing of Ledger's death, Jack Nicholson, who had played the Joker in Tim Burton's Batman, said, "I want him." Of course, it's all just speculation whether the role played any role in his overdose. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Also, why not subscribe to another channel I did? If you like this video, I think you'll like my other channel, which does biographies of notable people from history. Gonna link to that below. And as always, thank you for watching.